What would you do if a child knocked on your door at 2:47 a.m., bleeding blue blood, and carrying the genetic code that could either save the galaxy or destroy it? Because 6 months ago, that's exactly what happened to me. And what I thought was just helping a lost kid turned into the most dangerous decision I'd ever made. This is that story. It was 2:47 a.m. when I heard the knock. Sharp, deliberate, like someone knew I was awake. I remember staring at my ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster for the 100th time that week. Sleep hadn't been coming easy since the layoffs, since Sarah left, since everything fell apart, really. But this knock was different. Most people in this part of downtown don't knock. They bang, they shout, they kick doors until something gives way. This was calculated, patient. I rolled out of bed, my bare feet hitting the cold hardwood floor. The apartment was freezing. The heating unit had been acting up for months, and I couldn't afford to fix it. Hell, I could barely afford to keep the lights on. Another knock, same rhythm. 3 beats pause, 2 beats. I shuffled to the peephole, squinting through the scratched glass. The hallway light was flickering, like it always did, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow. But there, standing perfectly still in front of my door, was a child, a little girl, maybe 7 years old. Dark hair hanging straight down her shoulders. She wore a thin jacket that looked way too small for this weather. And she wasn't shivering. That should have been my first clue. It was February in Chicago, the kind of cold that bites through your bones and makes you question why humans ever thought living here was a good idea. I had 3 layers on just to sleep, and this kid was standing there like it was a spring morning. But what really got me was her stillness. Kids don't stand still. They fidget, they bounce, they look around. This girl stood there like a statue, staring straight ahead at my door. I hesitated. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to pretend I wasn't home, to go back to bed and let someone else deal with whatever this was. In this neighborhood, opening your door at 2:47 a.m. usually meant trouble was about to walk into your life. Then she knocked again. Same pattern, and I heard something that made my chest tighten. A voice. Small, clear, almost melodic. "Please," she said through the door. "My mother is hurt." 4 words, that's all it took. I unlocked the deadbolt, then the chain, then the regular lock. My hands were shaking, and not from the cold. When I opened the door, the first thing that hit me was how wrong everything felt. The girl looked up at me and I saw her eyes. Golden, not brown, not hazel. Golden, like sunlight through amber. They didn't reflect the hallway light the way human eyes should. They seemed to paneerate their own soft glow. She wasn't blinking. "Hello," she said, her voice carrying that same strange melody. "My name is Ilya. Can you help us?" Us. I looked past her into the hallway, and that's when I saw the shape huddled against the far wall. A woman slumped over, dark hair spilling across her face. Even from where I stood, I could see she was breathing, but barely. "Jesus," I whispered. The girl Ilya tilted her head slightly. "Is that a yes?" Something about the way she asked it, so formal, so careful, made me realize she wasn't just being polite. She was genuinely asking. Like she wasn't sure what my answer would be. I should have called 911. Should have gotten help from someone who actually knew what they were doing. Should have done a lot of things differently. Instead, I stepped into the hallway. "What happened to her?" I asked, kneeling down next to the woman. Up close, I could see she was young, maybe mid-20s. Her skin had an almost translucent quality, like porcelain. Beautiful but wrong somehow. "She collapsed," Ilya said simply. "We've been walking for a long time." I checked for a pulse. It was there, but weak and irregular. Her breathing was shallow. When I lifted her head slightly, trying to get a better look at her face, my hand came away wet. Blood, but not red. A deep, dark blue. Almost black. I stared at my hand, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. The liquid was warm, thicker than blood should be. It didn't smell metallic. It smelled like rain on hot asphalt. "She needs help," Ilya said, and there was something in her voice now. A tremor. The first sign that she might actually be a scared little girl and not some perfectly composed miniature adult. I looked up at her golden eyes, then back at the woman bleeding blue onto my hallway floor. Every rational part of my mind was telling me to back away, to close the door and pretend this never happened. But I couldn't. Maybe it was because I'd been alone for too long. Maybe it was because I knew what it felt like to be hurt and have nowhere to turn. Or maybe it was something else entirely. I slipped my arms under the woman's shoulders and knees, lifting her as carefully as I could. She was lighter than she looked, almost weightless. Her head lolled against my chest, and I could feel how cold her skin was, even through her clothes. "Come on," I said to Ilya. "Let's get her inside." The girl followed me into my apartment, closing the door behind her with a soft click. As I laid the woman down on my couch, I caught Ilya watching me with those unblinking golden eyes. "Thank you," she said quietly, and for the first time in months, I felt like I might have done something right. I just had no idea what I was getting myself into. The woman on my couch wasn't getting better. I'd grabbed every towel I could find, trying to stop the bleeding from what looked like a gash on her shoulder, but the blue liquid kept seeping through, staining my white towels like spilled ink. Ilya stood beside me, watching silently. She hadn't moved from that spot in 10 minutes, hadn't fidgeted, hadn't asked questions, just watched with those golden eyes that seemed to see everything. "What's your mother's name?" I asked, pressing another towel against the wound. "Myra," Ilya said, "and she's not my mother." I paused, looking up at her. "What? She takes care of me, but she's not my mother." The girl's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was explaining something obvious. "My mother died when I was small." "Oh," I didn't know what else to say. "I'm sorry." Ilya tilted her head. "Why are you sorry you didn't kill them?" There was something chilling about the way she said it, so casual, so accepting. Like death was just another fact of life, no more significant than the weather. "Where did you come from?" I asked, trying to change the subject. "I mean before you came here, tonight." "Far away," she said. "We walked for many hours. Myra said we needed to find humans. She said humans still have kindness. Still have kindness, like it was something that might have been lost somewhere along the way." I was about to ask what she meant when Myra stirred. Her eyes fluttered open and she tried to sit up, panic immediately flooding her face when she saw me. "No," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "No, Ilya. What did you do?" "She was hurt," I said quickly. "I'm just trying to help." Myra's eyes locked onto mine and I felt something cold wash over me. Her eyes were the same golden color as Ilya's, but older, harder, like she'd seen things that had carved pieces out of her soul. "You shouldn't have brought me here," she said to Ilya. "You know the rules." "The rules," Ilya said unquietly, "don't account for bleeding to death in a hallway." Myra struggled to sit up, fully wincing as the movement pulled at her wound. "We need to leave. Now." "You're not going anywhere," I said, pushing her gently back down. "Not until we figure out what's wrong with you. That wound needs proper medical attention." "No doctors," Myra said sharply. "No hospitals, no authorities." "Then what do you suggest? Because right now you're bleeding blue all over my couch and I have no idea how to help you." Myra and Ilya exchanged a look. One of those wordless conversations that people have when they've been through something together, when they share secrets that outsiders wouldn't understand. "You can't help us," Myra said finally. "You can only make things worse. Try me." The words came out harder than I intended. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the frustration of having my life turned upside down by two strangers who seemed determined to remain mysterious. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Maybe I was tired of feeling useless. "Look," I said, softening my voice, "I don't know what's going on here. I don't know who you are or where you came from, but I know you're hurt and I know you need help. So either you let me help you or you explain to me why I shouldn't." Myra was quiet for a long moment, studying my face like she was trying to read something written there. "You really don't know," she said finally. "Know what we are." Before I could ask what she meant, there was a knock at my door. Not the careful, measured knock that Ilya had used. This was aggressive, demanding. "Chicago PD, open up." My blood went cold. I looked at Myra, whose face had gone ashen. Ilya moved closer to the couch, her small hand finding Myra's. "You called them," Myra whispered, and there was something in her voice that made my chest ache. Betrayal, disappointment, like she'd expected this but had hoped she was wrong. "I didn't," I said quickly. "I swear I didn't call anyone." The knocking came again, louder this time. "We know you're in there, we just want to talk." I moved to the window, carefully pulling back the corner of the curtain. Two police officers stood in the hallway, but something was off about them. Their uniforms were too clean, too new, and they weren't wearing the right badges. "They're not police," I said quietly. Myra closed her eyes. "I know." "Then who are they?" "The ones who hurt me," she said. "The ones who've been hunting us." Hunting. The word sent a chill down my spine. "Why?" I asked. Myra looked at Alia, then back at me. "Because," she said slowly, "we're not from here, and what Ilya carries inside her could change everything." The knocking stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then I heard the sound of a key turning in my lock. "Back door," I whispered urgently. "Is there a back door?" Myra tried to stand, but her legs gave out. Ilya caught her, steadying her with surprising strength for such a small girl. "There's a fire escape," I said, "through the kitchen." But as we moved toward the back of the apartment, I heard the front door open. Too late. Myra breathed. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, getting closer. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, my hands shaking. I'd never held a weapon with the intent to use it before. Never thought I'd need to. "Stay behind me," I told them. Ilya looked up at me with those golden eyes. "Why are you helping us?" It was a good question. One I didn't have a good answer for. Because I said someone has to. And as the footsteps got closer, as the shadow of whoever was hunting them fell across my kitchen floor, I realized that maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all the reason I needed. The man who walked into my kitchen wasn't what I expected. He was tall, clean-shaven, wearing an expensive-looking coat that screamed federal agent, but his eyes were wrong. Too bright, too focused. Like he was seeing things the rest of us couldn't. "Mr. Chen," he said, and my blood froze. He knew my name. "I'm Agent Morrison. We're here about your guests." I tightened my grip on the knife. "I don't know what you're talking about." He smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. "The woman bleeding on your couch, the child with the interesting eyes. We know they're here." Behind me, I felt Ilya press closer to Myra. I could hear Myra's labored breathing getting worse by the minute. "They're hurt," I said. "They need medical attention." "What they need," Morrison said, taking a step closer, "is to come with us before this situation gets out of hand." "What situation?" Morrison studied me for a moment like he was deciding how much to tell me. "Mr. Chen, what do you know about extraterrestrial contact protocols?" The question hit me like a slap. "What? Your guests," he said patiently, "aren't human? I assume you've figured that out by now. The eyes, the blood, the way the child doesn't behave like a normal 7-year-old. I glanced back at Ilya. She was watching Morrison with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Not fear, something else, recognition. "You're lying," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew he wasn't. "The woman is Sha'ari," Morrison continued, "from a planet about 40 light years from here. The child is half human, half Sha'ari, a hybrid, very rare, very valuable." "Valuable how?" Morrison's smile widened. "Let's just say there are people who would pay a lot of money for the opportunity to study her." The way he said it made my stomach turn. "Study her. She's carrying information, Mr. Chen, biological data that could revolutionize our understanding of interstellar travel, weapon technology, things that could change the balance of power in this galaxy." I felt Ilya's small hand slip into mine. Her skin was warm, almost feverish. "She's just a kid," I said. "She's a key," Morrison replied, "to technology that could make Earth the dominant force in this sector. All we need is to extract the data from her genetic structure." Extract. The word made my skin crawl. "Over my dead body," I said. Morrison sighed. "Mr. Chen, you don't understand what you're dealing with. These aren't refugees. They're fugitives. The woman killed 3 of our operatives getting here. The child has abilities that could level a city block if she loses control." I looked down at Ilya. She seemed so small, so fragile. "You're afraid of a 7-year-old, I said. "I'm cautious of a 7-year-old who can project psychic energy strong enough to stop a human heart," Morrison replied. "Who inherited the complete biological weapons database of one of the most advanced civilizations in known space." My head was spinning. This was insane, all of it. Even if that's true, Skew. I said, she's still just a kid. She deserves better than being someone's lab rat. Morrison's expression hardened. Mr. Chen, you have two choices. You can hand them over now and we'll make sure you're compensated for your cooperation. Or you can make this difficult and we'll take them anyway. Either way, they're coming with us. That's when I heard the voice from the living room. Jun. It was Myra, weak but clear. Ask him about the others. Morrison's jaw tightened. The woman needs to stay quiet. What others? I asked. Jun Chen, Myra called again. Ask him how many children like Ilya they've taken. Ask him what happened to them. Shut up, Morrison snapped, but I could see something in his face. Guilt, shame, fear. How many? I pressed. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Then 7. And where are they now? That's classified. But I could see the answer in his eyes. They were gone, all of them. You son of a bitch, I breathed. It's for the greater good, Mr. Chen. The technology these hybrids carry could save millions of human lives. By murdering children. By making sacrifices that weak people like you don't have the stomach for. That's when Ilya spoke up. Mr. Morrison, she said, her voice carrying that strange melodic quality. May I ask you something? Morrison looked surprised. What? Do you have children? The question seemed to catch him off guard. That's not relevant. I think it is, Ilya said quietly, because if you have children, then you understand what it feels like to want to protect them. And if you don't have children, then you understand what it feels like to be alone. Something shifted in Morrison's expression. Just for a moment, the cold professionalism cracked, and I saw something human underneath. Either way, Ilya continued, you understand why Jun is helping us, because that's what humans do. They help. Morrison shook his head like he was trying to clear it. You're using your abilities on me. No, Ilya said simply. I'm just telling you the truth. That's when I heard it. A sound from outside. Footsteps on the fire escape. Morrison heard it too. His hand moved to his jacket where I assumed he kept his weapon. Back up? I asked. Insurance, he replied. But as the footsteps got closer, I noticed something strange. Morrison looked nervous. More nervous than he should have been if these were his people. That's not your backup, is it? I said. Morrison's face went pale. We need to move. Now. Why, what's out there? Other interested parties, he said grimly. People who make what we do to hybrids look like a day at the park. A window shattered in the living room. Then another. Morrison grabbed my arm. If you want to live, Mr. Chen, you'll do exactly what I say. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I believed him. The next 30 seconds changed everything I thought I knew about the universe. Morrison dragged me toward the living room where Myra was struggling to sit up on the couch. Ilya had positioned herself between Myra and the shattered windows, her golden eyes scanning the darkness outside. How many? Morrison barked into a radio I hadn't noticed before. Static, then a voice. At least 6, maybe more. They've got the building surrounded. Who are they that, I demanded. Morrison looked at me like I'd asked him to explain quantum physics to a toddler. Harvest teams, black market organ traders who specialize in alien biology. They want the girl for parts. My stomach lurched. Parts. Her neural tissue, her bone marrow, her blood. Every piece of her body contains data that's worth millions on the underground market. He checked his weapon, a sleek pistol that looked nothing like standard police issue. They'll keep her alive for months while they extract everything useful. I looked at Ilya. She was still staring out the window, but I could see her hands trembling now. The first real sign of fear I'd seen from her. How do they even know she's here? I asked. Biosignatures, Morrison said grimly. Hybrids emit a unique electromagnetic field. Anyone with the right equipment can track them from miles away. Then why haven't you been tracking her? Morrison paused, glancing at Myra. Because she's been masking the signature somehow, hiding it. We only found them because, he trailed off. Because what? Because she's dying, Myra said quietly from the couch. The masking technique requires constant energy I don't have anymore. I knelt beside her. Up close, I could see how pale she'd become. The blue blood had soaked through all my towels. What happened to you? I asked. We were ambushed 2 days ago, she said. 3 agents like him. She nodded toward Morrison. I fought them off, but not before one of them injected me with something. A toxin designed to break down Shari cellular structure. You're poisoned? I'm dying, she said simply. That's why we came here. Why I brought Ilya to you. Me? Why me specifically? Myra managed a weak smile. Because your neighbor told us you were kind. My neighbor? Mr. Bailey, Ilya said without turning away from the window. He's been watching out for refugees like us for years. He has a network, people who help. Mr. Bailey, the old man across the hall who I barely knew, who always seemed to know more about the building's residents than he should. He's part of some underground railroad, I asked. Something like that, Morrison said. And right now, we have bigger problems. A new sound reached us from outside, mechanical whirring like drones. Scanning equipment, Morrison muttered. They're mapping the building, looking for the best entry points. That's when Ilya turned around. Her golden eyes were brighter now, almost glowing. Jun, she said quietly, I need to tell you something about what I carry. Ilya, no, Myra whispered. He needs to know, the girl said firmly. If something happens to me, someone needs to understand what's at stake. She walked over to where I was kneeling and sat down cross-legged in front of me. For the first time, she looked like what she was supposed to be, a scared little girl. My father was a scientist, she said. Dr. Kyle Thorne. He worked for the Shari Defense Council developing weapons to protect our colonies from raiders. Weapons, not guns or bombs, she said. Something else. A way to disable entire fleets without killing anyone. To make aggressive ships simply stop. Morrison was listening now, his attention split between the conversation and the sounds from outside. It was meant to be a peacekeeping tool, Ilya continued, a way to end conflicts without bloodshed. But the council wanted to weaponize it, turn it into something that could eliminate entire populations. So your father stole it. He tried to destroy it, she said, but the data was too valuable, too dangerous to leave in anyone's hands. So he did the only thing he could think of. She touched her chest right over her heart. He encoded it into my DNA, made me a living repository for the research, the only copy that exists. My mind was reeling. You're carrying the blueprints for a super weapon. For a peace weapon, she corrected. But yes, in the wrong hands, it could be used to control or destroy entire civilizations. That's why everyone wants you. That's why my father brought us to Earth, Myra said. He believed humans were the only species that might use the technology responsibly, that might choose peace over power. I looked at Morrison. Is that what your government plans to do? Choose peace? His silence was answer enough. The harvest teams outside don't care about peace or war, he said finally. They just want to sell the data to the highest bidder. Could be the Chinese, could be the Russians, could be alien warlords from halfway across the galaxy. The mechanical whirring was getting louder, closer. How long do we have? I asked. Morrison checked his radio. Minutes, maybe less. I looked at Ilya, this tiny girl carrying the weight of civilizations in her genetic code. Then at Myra dying on my couch because she tried to protect her. Then at Morrison, a man caught between duty and conscience. There has to be another way, I said. Like what? Morrison asked. I didn't have an answer. But as I watched Ilya sitting there trying so hard to be brave, I knew I couldn't let them take her. Not the government agents, not the harvest teams, not anyone. Ilya, I said quietly, this ability you have, the one Morrison mentioned, can you use it to help us? She looked uncertain. I'm not supposed to. Myra says it's dangerous. Everything about this situation is dangerous, I pointed out. Myra struggled to speak. Jun, if she uses her abilities at full strength, the psychic feedback could kill her. And if she doesn't use them, the harvest teams will take her apart piece by piece. We all fell silent, the weight of the impossible choices pressing down on us. That's when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, bathing everything in red. And in that crimson glow, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Figures rappelling past the windows, moving with military precision. They're coming, Morrison said, raising his weapon. Ilya stood up, her golden eyes now blazing like twin suns. Then it's time to show them, she said quietly, what humans and Shari can do together. And as the first window exploded inward, I realized that everything I thought I knew about courage, about sacrifice, about what it meant to be human was about to be tested in ways I never could have imagined. The first man through the window moved like liquid death. Black tactical gear, no insignia face hidden behind a mask that looked more alien than human. He hit the floor rolling, came up with a weapon I'd never seen before, something that hummed with energy and cast an eerie blue glow. Morrison put 3 bullets in mine before he could fire. The man didn't go down. "Enhanced physiology," Morrison shouted over the sound of more windows shattering. "Armor plating under the skin. Aim for the head." 2 more figures dropped through the broken windows. I grabbed Ilya and pulled her behind the couch where Myra lay. The girl's eyes were blazing now, so bright I could see them clearly even in the red emergency lighting. "How many are there?" I yelled. "Too many," Morrison replied, firing at a shadow moving near the kitchen. That's when I remembered something. My building was old, built in the 1940s. The walls were solid brick, but the heating system ran through the floors. If I could access the basement level, there might be a way out through the old tunnels that connected to the subway system. "There's another way," I called to Morrison. "What?" "Basement access, through the heating ducts." Morrison ducked as something that looked like a miniature lightning bolt scorched the wall where his head had been. "Where bedroom closet, there's a panel that leads to the maintenance shaft." "Go," he said. "I'll hold them off." I looked at him. This man who worked for people who wanted to dissect Ilya for science, who had probably done terrible things in the name of national security. But right now, he was the only thing standing between us and the harvest teams. "What about you?" "This is what I signed up for," he said grimly, "protecting assets from hostile acquisition." "She's not an asset," I said. "She's a little girl." Morrison glanced back at me, and for a moment his mask slipped completely. "I know." I started to move toward the bedroom, carrying Ilya with Myra leaning heavily on my other arm. We made it maybe 3 steps before one of the intruders appeared in the hallway ahead of us. This one was different, taller. The blue glow from his weapon was brighter, more focused. When he spoke, his voice had a mechanical quality that made my skin crawl. "Subject located," he said into some kind of comm device, initiating extraction protocol. He raised his weapon, and I knew we were dead. That's when Ilya stepped in front of us. "No," she said quietly. The word hit the intruder like a physical force. He staggered backward, his weapon wavering. "Ilya, don't," Myra whispered. "You're not strong enough yet." But Ilya wasn't listening. Her golden eyes were fixed on the intruder, and I could feel something building in the air around us, like the moment before lightning strikes. "You want to hurt us," she said to the man. "But why? We've done nothing to you." The intruder tried to speak, but no words came out. His hand was shaking now, the weapon's aim drifting. "You have families," Ilya continued, her voice taking on that strange melodic quality. "People you love. People who love you. How would you feel if someone came to take them away? To hurt them?" The man's weapon clattered to the floor. "Ilya, stop," Myra said urgently. "You're burning yourself out." But I could see what was happening. It wasn't just the intruder in the hallway. Through the broken windows, I could see other figures stopping mid-motion, weapons lowering. The assault was grinding to a halt. "I can feel their thoughts," Ilya whispered, sweat beading on her forehead. "They're not evil, they're just lost, confused. Someone told them we were dangerous." The intruder in the hallway fell to his knees. When he pulled off his mask, I saw a face that could have belonged to anyone's brother, anyone's son. Young, scared, human. "What have I done?" he whispered. But the effort was costing Ilya everything. Her legs buckled, and I caught her as she collapsed. "Too much," Myra breathed. "She used too much." Morrison appeared beside us, his weapon still ready. "We need to move, now. This won't hold them for long." He was right. Through the windows, I could see some of the figures starting to move again, shaking their heads like they were waking up from a dream. "Can you walk?" I asked Myra. "I can try, what?" We made our way to the bedroom, Morrison covering our retreat. The young intruder who dropped his weapon actually helped us, steadying Myra when she stumbled. "I'm sorry," he kept saying. "I'm so sorry. They told us you were weapons. Monsters." "We're just trying to survive," Myra said gently. In the bedroom closet, I found the maintenance panel I remembered from when the heating system broke down last winter. It was a tight fit, but we could squeeze through. Morrison was checking his ammunition. "I'll stay here. Buy you time." Momo, you'll die, I said. Maybe, but they'll get through either way if someone doesn't slow them down. The young intruder stepped forward. I'll stay too. Help you. Morrison looked at him suspiciously. Why so? Because she's right, he said, looking at Ilya. I do have people I love, and if someone came for them, he picked up his fallen weapon. I'd want someone to stand in the way. I was helping Myra through the panel when I heard Ilya speak. Wait. We all turned to look at her. She was pale, exhausted, but her golden eyes were clear. There's something else, she said. Something I haven't told you about the data I carry. What? Morrison asked. It's not just weapons technology, she said quietly. It's also the location of something. Something my father discovered just before he died. What kind of something? Ilya looked at each of us in turn. A way home, for all of us, humans and Sha'ari, and everyone else who's been scattered across the galaxy by war and fear. The implications hit me like a freight train. You're talking about a portal, she said, a permanent gateway that could end the isolation. The fear, the fighting. Morrison stared at her. That's impossible. My father didn't think so, Myra said. That's why they killed him. That's why they're hunting us, not just for weapons, but to make sure that portal is never built. Because peace is bad for business, I said. Because peace would make a lot of very powerful people obsolete, Morrison corrected. Outside, I could hear voices. The harvest teams were regrouping. Whatever spell Ilya had cast was wearing off. We need to go, Morrison said. But as we squeezed through the maintenance shaft, heading for whatever uncertain future waited in the tunnels below, I couldn't stop thinking about what Ilya had said. A way home. For everyone. Maybe that was worth fighting for. Maybe that was worth dying for. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what it meant to be human. The maintenance tunnels beneath my building were a maze of rusted pipes and forgotten spaces. We'd been crawling for what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes. Myra was getting weaker with every step, leaving a trail of blue blood on the concrete behind us. Ilya stayed close to her, one small hand pressed against the wound, trying to help however she could. Morrison and the young intruder, who told us his name was David, brought up the rear watching for pursuit. There, I said, pointing to a section where the tunnel widened. That should connect to the old subway access. But as we approached the junction, I heard something that made my stomach drop. Footsteps. Lots of them. Coming from the direction we were heading. They flanked us, Morrison muttered. Smart. We were trapped. Harvest teams behind us, harvest teams ahead. Nowhere to run. Myra collapsed against the tunnel wall, her breathing shallow and rapid. I can't go any further. Ilya knelt beside her, tears streaming down her face. Don't give up. Please. Little star, Myra whispered, using what I assumed was a Shari endearment. I need you to listen to me, very carefully. No, Ilya said firmly. We're getting out of this, all of us. The data I carry, Myra continued, ignoring her protest. It's not just in your DNA. There's an activation sequence, a biological key that has to be provided willingly with full understanding of the consequences. I felt a chill run down my spine. What kind of consequences? Myra looked at me with those golden eyes now dim with approaching death. The person who activates the portal becomes part of it, permanently. Their consciousness becomes the gateway itself. You're talking about sacrifice, Morrison said quietly. I'm talking about choice, Myra corrected. My husband chose to hide the data rather than let it be weaponized. Now someone else has to choose whether to activate it. That someone being Ilya. Ahadin, I said. That someone being whoever loves her enough to want a better universe for her to grow up in. The footsteps were getting closer from both directions. Maybe 2 minutes before they reached us, David was checking his weapon. I can buy you time, he said. Hold them off while you figure this out. With what? Morrison asked. You've got maybe 30 rounds. They've got enhanced physiology and military-grade equipment. Then I'll make every shot count. I looked at this kid who'd been trying to capture us an hour ago and was now ready to die for us. Why? Because he said simply, someone has to stand up for the right thing, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, I thought. That's when Ilya stood up. Her golden eyes were blazing again. but different this time. Calmer, more focused. "There's another way," she said quietly. "What?" "The portal doesn't need a permanent sacrifice," she said. "It needs a willing bridge. Someone who can connect two worlds without losing themselves." Myra struggled to sit up. "Ilya, that's not how the technology works. Your father was very clear." "My father was working alone," Ilya interrupted. "But I'm not alone. I have June. I have you. I have people who care about me." She turned to look at me. "The human capacity for connection, for love, for refusing to give up on people. That's what my father never factored into his equations." "I don't understand." "The portal works by creating a bridge between consciousness," she explained. "My father assumed it had to be one consciousness alone holding the connection forever. But what if it was multiple consciousness sharing the load, supporting each other?" Morrison was staring at her. "You're talking about a permanent psychic link." "I'm talking about family," Ilya said simply. The footsteps were very close now, maybe 30 seconds. "If we do this," I said, "what happens to us?" "We become something new," Ilya said. "Human and Shari and whatever else comes through the portal. Connected but still ourselves." Myra was crying now, blue tears streaming down her face. "You don't know if it will work." "I know it's worth trying," Ilya said. "And I know I'd rather risk everything for the chance at peace than spend the rest of my life running from people who want to use me." The first figures appeared at the far end of the tunnel. Combat gear, weapons raised. "Decide now, Israel," Morrison said, raising his own weapon. I looked at Ilya, this brave, impossible little girl who carried the hopes of worlds in her DNA. Then at Myra, dying but still fighting to protect her. Then at David and Morrison, enemies turned allies in the space of an hour. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. Ilya smiled, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, a 7-year-old girl who believed in happy endings. "Just hold my hand," she said, "and don't let go." I took her small hand in mine. Her skin was warm, almost burning. I could feel something building between us, like electricity, but gentler. More alive. "Myra," Ilya asked. The dying woman reached out with her last strength, taking Ilya's other hand. "Together. Together." The harvest teams were shouting now, demanding we surrender. Their weapons were charging up, that familiar blue glow filling the tunnel. "David Morrison," I called. "Last chance to walk away." David grinned. "And missed the chance to change the universe." "Not likely." Morrison nodded grimly. "For what it's worth, this is probably the stupidest thing I've ever done. And I once tried to arrest a Martian diplomat." They each placed a hand on our linked chain. 5 people, 3 species, all choosing hope over fear. The energy building between us was incredible now. I could feel Ilya's thoughts, her memories, her dreams for a universe where children didn't have to run from monsters. I could feel Myra's love, fierce and protective, even as her life ebbed away. I could feel David's guilt transforming into determination, Morrison's cynicism melting into something that might have been faith. And underneath it all, I could feel something vast and waiting. The portal dormant, but not dead, ready to awaken. "Now," Ilya whispered. The world exploded into light. Not the harsh, violent light of weapons or destruction, but something warm and welcoming, like coming home after a long journey through the dark. When my vision cleared, the harvest teams were gone. The tunnel was gone. We were standing in a space that existed between spaces, surrounded by doorways that led to worlds I couldn't even imagine. "Did it work?" I asked. Ilya squeezed my hand. She was still. Ilya, still 7 years old, still brave beyond measure. But now she was also something more. A bridge between worlds. A keeper of connections. "Look," she said, pointing to one of the doorways. Through it I could see Earth. My apartment building, somehow rebuilt and beautiful. People walking in the streets without fear, humans and aliens side by side. Through another doorway, the Shari homeworld, no longer ravaged by war, but green and growing. Through a third worlds I'd never heard of, species I'd never imagined, all connected by paths of light and hope. "The portal network," Myra said, and I was amazed to hear her voice strong again. "It's not just a gateway, it's a web, connecting everyone who chooses connection over isolation." How long will it last? Morrison asked. Ilya smiled. As long as there are people willing to believe that love is stronger than fear, that together is better than alone. She looked at me with those golden eyes that now held depths I was only beginning to understand. Thank you, she said quietly, for opening your door, for not giving up, for showing me what it means to be human. What does it mean? I asked. It means that when someone knocks on your door at 2:47 a.m. bleeding and afraid and carrying the weight of worlds, you help them anyway. And as we stepped through the doorway that led home, I realized that maybe that was the most important lesson of all. 6 months later, I woke up to the sound of laughter, not the careful, measured responses I'd grown used to from Ilya in those first weeks. Real laughter, the kind that comes from a child who feels safe enough to be silly. I rolled out of bed and padded to the kitchen of our new place. It was bigger than my old apartment, with windows that actually let in sunlight and a heating system that worked. The government had been surprisingly generous with the relocation package once they understood what we'd accomplished. Ilya was sitting at the breakfast table, golden eyes sparkling, as she tried to teach Myra how to make pancakes. Myra, fully recovered and more beautiful than ever, was making a mess of it. "The batter is supposed to be smooth," Ilya was saying, barely containing her giggles. "Shari cooking techniques don't translate well to Earth ingredients," Myra replied with mock dignity. "This is a learning experience." "This is a disaster," I said, surveying the flour-covered counter. They both turned to look at me, and for a moment I was struck by how normal it all felt. How right, like this was the family I'd been waiting for my whole life without knowing it. Morrison had taken early retirement from whatever agency he'd worked for. Last I heard, he was teaching conflict resolution at a small college in Vermont. He called sometimes, usually when he had had a few drinks, and wanted to talk about how much better he slept at night. David had gone back to school studying xenobiology and interspecies communication. He wanted to be part of the new world we were building, where humans and aliens work together instead of against each other. Mr. Bailey, it turned out, had been coordinating refugee assistance for decades. The quiet old man across the hall was actually one of the most important figures in the underground network that helped displaced beings find sanctuary on Earth. He'd moved into the apartment next to ours, claiming he needed to keep an eye on his most successful placement. "Any word from the portal today?" Myra asked, handing me a cup of coffee. I nodded toward the corner of the kitchen, where a soft blue glow emanated from what looked like an ordinary mirror. Through it, I could see glimpses of other worlds, other families starting their days. 3 new refugee families arrived on Kepler 442b, I said. And the trade delegation from Proxima Centauri confirmed they'll be sending their first ambassador to Earth next month. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. There were still people on both sides who feared the changes, who wanted to close the portals and go back to the old ways of isolation and suspicion. But every day there were more who chose connection over fear. Jun, Ilya said quietly, "Do you ever regretted opening your door that night?" I looked at her, this remarkable girl who'd grown 3 inches and learned to ride a bicycle and argued with me about homework just like any normal kid. Except she also maintained a psychic connection to an interdimensional portal network and occasionally had to mediate disputes between alien diplomats. "No," I said, "never. Even though your life got so complicated," I sat down beside her, pulling her into a hug. "Especially because my life got complicated. The best things in life usually are." Myra set a plate of vaguely pancake-shaped objects in front of us. They were blue. I decided not to ask why. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "my people have a saying. Strength comes not from being an unbroken, but from choosing to heal together." "Humans have a saying too," I replied. "Family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up when everything falls apart." Ilya took a bite of blue pancake and made a face. "These are terrible." "They're perfect," I said, taking a bite of my own. "They really were terrible, because we made them together." That afternoon, we got a visitor. I was fixing the leaky faucet in the bathroom when I heard the knock. 3 beats pause, 2 beats. The same pattern Ilya had used that first night. But when I opened the door, it wasn't another refugee family or a government official or even Mr. Bailey with news from the network. It was a kid, maybe 12 years old, with scales instead of skin and eyes like emeralds. He was shivering despite the warm spring day, and there was fear written all over his face. "Please," he said in accented English. "My sister is hurt." I looked past him and saw a girl maybe 8 years old unconscious in the hallway. She had the same scales, the same green eyes, and she was bleeding silver. For just a moment, I hesitated. We'd built something good here, something safe. Opening that door might complicate everything all over again. Then I heard Ilya's voice from behind me. "Is that them?" she asked. "The Zephyrian sibling as we've been expecting?" I turned to look at her. Expecting. She smiled that same brave smile she'd given me 6 months ago. The portal network isn't just for connecting worlds, Jun. It's for connecting people who need each other. You knew they were coming. I hoped they were coming, she corrected. Because that's what family does. We make room for one more. I looked at the scared boy in my doorway carrying his unconscious sister bleeding silver blood in my hallway. I thought about that night 6 months ago when I'd made the same choice. How it had changed everything. How it had saved everything. "Come on in," I said, stepping aside. "Let's get her to the couch." As the boy carried his sister inside, Myra was already gathering medical supplies. Ilya was clearing space on the couch, her golden eyes gentle and welcoming. "What are your names?" I asked. "I'm Kex," the boy said. "This is my sister Zara. We've been traveling for weeks. The portal brought us here, but I don't know why." "I do," Ilya said quietly. "Because this is where strangers become family, where the broken pieces fit together to make something beautiful." I watched Myra tend to Zara's wounds, her touch gentle and sure. I watched Kex gradually relax as he realized he was safe. I watched Ilya explain how the portal network worked, how we'd all found each other, how love really could be stronger than fear. And I realized that the story that had started with a knock on my door at 2:47 a.m. wasn't ending. It was just beginning. Because that's what humans do. We open doors, we make room, we choose connection over isolation, hope over fear, together over alone. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And maybe in a universe full of wonders and terrors and infinite possibilities, that's the most important thing we can do. Keep our doors open. Keep making room for one more. Keep choosing love.